This video discusses historical medicine practices involving addiction, overdose, infant death, radiation poisoning, and graphic medical harm. This video is intended for educational, historical, and documentary purposes. Rabbit Hole Radio doesn't promote drug use, self-harm, dangerous medical practices, or misinformation. The events, substances, and products discussed are present in historical context to examine how unregulated medicine shaped modern healthcare laws. If any of these topics are upsetting to you, click off now. Viewer discretion is advised.
This is Rabbit Hole Radio.
Imagine walking into a pharmacy in 1905 because you have a cough, and then they give you a bottle of heroin. Not metaphorically, not herbal, not inspired by, but actual pharmaceutical heroin. And the craziest part, people thought it was healthy. Before modern drug laws existed, medicine was basically the Wild West. Companies could almost put anything into a bottle and sell it as a cure. Morphine was for crying babies, cocaine for toothaches, radioactive water for energy, and somehow, it got worse. This is an era where your doctor might prescribe cigarettes for asthma, while a traveling salesman convinced your grandmother that Mercury could cure anxiety. Hey everyone, welcome back to Rabbit Hole Radio. My name is Megan. Today, we're diving into the most cursed period in medical history, when medicine was accidentally lethal. Grab a snack, grab a blanket, and let's dive into this ruin. Before the early 1900s, medicine regulation barely existed. There was no modern FDA, no ingredient transparency laws, no required clinical trials. A company could literally invent a miracle cure in their basement, fill it with alcohol, narcotics, and they would sell it nationwide. These were called patented medications. Even though they actually weren't, the name just made them sound more scientific. But the advertisements promised people that they could cure tuberculosis, depression, headaches, female hysteria, weak nerves, baldness, laziness, bad blood. They advertised it was the only thing that would keep you alive. If you felt weird in any way, there's probably a bottle for it. And people didn't understand chemistry yet. Medicine often just meant there was something powerful enough to make you feel different. Which honestly, that explains a lot. One of the most insane examples came from Bayer. Yes, that Bayer. In the late 1890s, Bayer introduced heroin as a medical breakthrough. At the time, morphine addiction had become a massive problem after the Civil War. Injured soldiers were being prescribed it constantly. So Bayer thought, what if we invent a less addictive alternative? And somehow, they thought the alternative should be heroin. The company literally advertised it as safe and non-addictive. The doctors prescribed it for coughs, cold, pneumonia, bronchitis, and to children. Literal children. Imagine being 6 years old with the flu and your mom just gave you pharmaceutical heroin right before school. Like, what the fuck? But the wildest part, people generally thought it worked wonders. It did suppress coughing, but mostly because you were extremely high. But eventually doctors realized patients were becoming horrifically addicted. And it turned out heroin wasn't the miracle wellness product that they hoped for. There was a huge realization there. By the 1920s, governments started banning it. But for a period of time, heroin was something that your great-grandparents could easily buy at the pharmacy. Isn't that wild? If heroin wasn't cursed enough, let's talk about cocaine. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, cocaine was everywhere. Doctors used it as a painkiller, an antidepressant, an energy booster, a treatment for alcoholism, and a cure for morphine addiction. Which is kind of like trying to solve a house fire with a flamethrower. You could buy cocaine drops for toothaches for children. There was cocaine in cigarettes allegedly designed to help asthma. And yes, of course, a lot of people know this one already, but if you didn't, early versions of Coca-Cola actually contained coca leaf extraction, which had traces of cocaine compounds before reformulation. Imagine grabbing soda after work and accidentally microdosing stimulants. Victorian-era medicine really said, What if we made every product chemically insane? And honestly, a shocking amount of medical science back then was just, let's try it and see if the patient dies. Now we're going to get into the truly horrific stuff. Because once scientists discovered radiation in the late 1800s, people became obsessed with it. Radiation seemed magical. It would glow, it produced heat, it seemed so futuristic. And since nobody fully understood radiation poisoning yet, companies started putting radioactive material into consumer products, including medicine. One of the most famous examples was Radithor. Radithor was literally radioactive water infused with radium. Its slogan was basically a cure for the living dead, which in hindsight, that might have been the most accidentally threatening slogan ever created. The drink promised increased energy, increased sex drive, improved health, rejuvenation, and wealthy people loved it. One of its most famous victims was wealthy socialite and golfer Eben Byers. Eben Byers drank Radithor constantly because his doctor recommended it. At first, he thought it worked. He felt energized, confident, invincible. Then his bones started disintegrating. The radiation slowly poisoned him from the inside out. His jaw decayed, parts of his skull collapsed. When he eventually died in 1932, newspapers reported him as the radium water worked until his jaw came off, which sounds fake, but it's real. His death became one of the biggest public wake-up calls about radioactive consumer products. And honestly, that was probably one of the worst product reviews in human history. This next chapter, it genuinely terrifies me. Back then, parents were desperate for ways to calm crying babies. So pharmaceutical companies created soothing syrup. Sounds harmless, right? Once again, the pharmaceutical companies done wrong. Many of these soothing syrups contained morphine, opium, alcohol, and even chloroform. One infamous product was Miss Winslow's soothing syrup. It was marketed to help teething babies sleep peacefully, and it definitely did that, because babies were sedated with narcotics. Some infants reportedly became seriously ill or died from overdose. But parents often didn't know what was inside the bottle because ingredient labels weren't required yet. Imagine buying baby medicine today and finding afterwards it secretly contained chloroform. That was their reality back then. People in this era also casually consumed heavy metals. Mercury was used for depression, constipation, infections, syphilis. Arsenic was sold in tiny doses as a beauty enhancer. Some products claim that arsenic would make your skin pale and beautiful because those were the Victorian beauty standards. Some products claim that arsenic can make your skin pale and beautiful, and those were the Victorian beauty standards at the time. And to be fair, it would make you pale, but only for a little while. Lead makeup, mercury creams, and arsenic wayfarers. Humanity really spent centuries poisoning itself in the name of wellness, which honestly makes modern influencer supplements feel slightly less surprising, because the wellness industry has always existed. It just used to glow in the dark and dissolve your organs faster. I know it's easy to laugh at this stuff now. I know I did when I was first learning about it. It just seems so bizarre in this day and age. But honestly, people back then weren't stupid. They were desperate. Modern medicine barely existed yet. Antibiotics hadn't been discovered. Medical research was primitive. Child mortality was terrifyingly high. If it was your child that was sick back then, you would probably try anything. And when these medicines made people feel something immediately, they assumed it was working. Because if cough syrup contained alcohol, cocaine, heroin, or morphine, you absolutely noticed a difference. That's what made this era so dangerous. Relief and healing are not always the same thing. And honestly, that idea still matters today. Eventually, the death became impossible to ignore, and public outrage grew. Journalists started exposing the truth about the pharmaceutical industry. One major turning point came after the publication of The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. which exposed horrifying conditions in the food and manufacturing industries. The public pressure helped the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 in the United States. For the first time, companies had to be honest and start labeling dangerous ingredients. And over time, regulations became stricter. They did a lot more safety testing, ingredients transparency, dose standards, and approval systems. All the boring rules we complain about today, they exist because people used to accidentally drink radioactive poison marketed as wellness juice. And honestly, this entire rabbit hole feels weirdly familiar. Because while we laugh at radioactive water and heroin cough syrup, modern wellness culture still has its own version of miracle cures. Detox teas, questionable supplements, TikTok health hacks, influencers selling products with zero scientific evidence. The packaging changed, but human psychology didn't. People will always want quick fixes, especially when they're suffering. And history shows that when desperation meets unregulated profit, things can get dark really fast. So, next time you take cold medicine approved by modern safety standards, just remember, at least your cough syrup won't dissolve your skeleton. And that concludes the end of this deep dive. If you enjoyed this episode of Rabbit Hole Radio, hit that subscribe button for more. Give a thumbs up so I know you're supporting this channel. Because trust me, we barely scratched the surface. And if you've made it this far, you get a gold star. See you in the next episode.